the topic, of course, is how are Indo-French companies implementing their ESG roadmap. So we had a little conversation earlier. So I thought all of you come from very different backgrounds. So to make the conversation and the experience for everyone illustrative, exemplified and useful, I thought I'll ask a question and then each of you could spend about 2 minutes maybe, not more than that ideally. One is to talk about what you do as a company, which is about 30 seconds. And the other 1.5 minutes is to talk about what are you doing in the space of ESG and what does ESG mean to you? Just to give a context to this conversation, between 2014 and 2020, ESG was a very hot topic. Most ESG funds did well, stock prices were up. After 20, actually, Wall Street is not as kindly disposed to ESG as it was earlier. Not just that, as many of you perhaps know, in countries like the United States, there's a lot of pushback towards ESG investing. So things are not looking as good. But having said that, almost $18 trillion of assets under management are invested in ESG assets right now. That figure is going to go up, but I think the question is how much. So let's go this way, and why don't you start off, Deepak?
So, good evening, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So Schneider Electric in India is now present for 60 years, and we are specialists in energy management and automation. And ESG is something we started for the world as a company almost 20 years ago. So it is not new to us. But when you look at India, where the energy demand still needs to go by 6x in the next few years, electricity side and energy by 2x. Still our country, a big part of the country is living at less than 800 units per year. So while we are not there where we want to, but we have created enough pollution in the ecosystem that at some parts of the country it still becomes breathable challenge, and that season starts now, right? So while this is a real problem where we are living and we want to solve for tomorrow when the expansion of the economy takes place and everybody's eyeing us at this, the only point is how do we fix the same time when we build it. So I think this is the biggest challenge we as a generation is facing, and we want to fix things through technology. At Schneider Electric, we have made commitments for, of course, ourselves. And actually, it's not just a commitment to make screens and PowerPoints look happy. They are part of an individual KPI of 140,000 employees across the world. So our commitments are not there for just to make a discussion attractive.
So what's your KPI in this?
So in this KPI, I mean, from a personal perspective, my compensation is linked to the commitment of what we reach as a sustainability index in the group and in the country. And then as a company, we are of course biased to develop solutions and architectures, and one of our customers is sitting here, where we help companies to reduce their carbon emissions to the extent of possible solutions. So be it by 30%, there's a customer sitting next to me, we have built a solution together helping Capgemini to reduce that. So these are the things we are doing practically. And the last thing is also awareness. I think awareness is an important piece, and that's what we do from Schneider Electric also, be it training people, upskilling people on how do we do it, or helping country. And this was a report we published in the early of the year, how can we reach net zero in India by 2047. So technology, awareness, and execution in-house as a practice.
So I'm going to come back with what illustration that you'll have to give us. Ashwini, over to you. If he says you're a client, I'm sure he must be a client to you too, being a consulting firm, but nevertheless, tell us what's your illustration.
So very quickly, we Capgemini, we are into IT, technology, engineering, and what's very interesting is more than 50% of Capgemini group, which is more than 185,000 employees, are in India, which is very unique for a French company, So for us, ESG, has been there in our DNA, but I would just say on the E side, we have 8 priorities overall. I'll not go through all of them, but on the E side, the classic ones on putting a net zero goal, but what's something which we have set up for ourselves is to be 100% renewable by 2025. What's good for us and what we've done in India is we are already 100% renewable. And one of the other things which we've done very uniquely, with Deepak and team, and I think putting a KPI is probably something French, you know. So if any other French CEO has KPI on reducing carbon footprint, jointly I and Deepak have a solution, which is we built something called as an energy command center. Through, you know, we are again uniquely positioned. We have 50% of our real estate is owned by us. So we have around 12 megawatts of solar power on our campuses, and many of our campuses are run by ourselves. Every equipment of the campus can be tracked, monitored, and managed through this energy command center. And as Deepak mentioned, by doing that, we have now saved 30% of our energy costs. So it's not only good for your bonus, it's also good for your cost structure. On S, again, a few KPIs, but one thing which again I'm very proud of is being a technology company and people company, we are focused on building talent. And one of the things we do is digital academies across globally. In India, we till now in last around 10 years since we started, we impacted 1.8 million lives through, at any given point, we are running 40 plus digital academies. There are many other things, but I would be conscious of time and, you know, maybe hand it over to them,
Sure.
to Dilkush.
Dilkush, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Thanks, Ashwin. So Euromoney announced their awards for 2023 recently, and BNP Paribas was recognized as the world's best financial provider for sustainable finance. So I think that speaks a lot for what we are doing globally with our clients and also in India. And to that extent, there are a lot of, it resonates with the commitments that we have made. So our strategy for 2025 speaks about G, T and S, which is growth, technology and sustainability. And linking all of that together, we have made some strong commitments to the market. One of them is that we would not be financing production of new oil and gas exploration. Also, we have commitments for extending sustainable finance by to 150 billion euros, sustainable bonds to 200 billion euros, and 250 billion for investments. So that's a large statement that we have put out. So ESG is embedded in our business model.
Can you give us an illustration of what you're doing here, like either on the
Sure.
Indo-French corridor or within India?
So within India, we have, that was the illustration I was going to come to. So we have worked with a company in the cement industry, so it's a hard-to-abate sector. We've worked with them on building the sustainable linked framework, and that has helped them to go to the market and get financing, which will help them in reduce their CO2 emissions as well as intensity. And we've also participated in the funding for the same. And besides...
And how would that be different from, let's say, any other cement company or any other company you would have lent to?
So it's not always that, cement companies or any other hard-to-abate, it's very difficult for them to say that, I can reduce my emission to this extent. When you are linking the financing to a sustainable linked loan, there is a KPI. And they have to meet the KPI, and their pricing depends on that. You could call back the loan if they don't meet those KPIs. There are checks which are conducted. There's an external agency which is going to, rate them and check whether the KPIs are met. So this financing comes to them at a reasonable rate, but they're supposed to meet these criteria. So it's different from just going in for a capex and building additional capex.
Got it. Okay, Isha.
So for us at Pernod Ricard, actually, the group has always been engaged into the sustainability because it's a must for alcohol, which is not a natural product, and also because our product comes from agriculture. So it's a question of survival for us to be long-term sustainable. If I look at India, to be more specific and being conscious of time pressure, we really have 3 elements, which is energy, carbon, and water. And I would highlight in particular water. We are very proud that with the 27 manufacturing sites that we have in India, we are water positive by replenishing more than what we take. We are also actually supporting more than 8,000 farmers to use more sustainable practices and consume less water, less energy. So that's how we impact in particular the communities.
Could you tell us a little more on the replenishing water? How do you do it? And
In each of the sites, we have watershed, and we collect the rain waters, and we put it back into the system to be able to impact positively the water system of the manufacturing site where we are.
and this is something you do all over the world, or just?
Well, especially in India, and to my knowledge, it's the only country where we are water positive already. We're working on that in other countries.
So what else would be a ESG target for you apart from water?
Well, we, as I said, we have the reduction of carbon footprint. We have the packaging, which is something that is extremely important for us. We ran our Unbox project last year, and to remove the monocarton of the bottle. In our industry, that's something that was deemed impossible, and that the consumer would always like the monocarton. We did it. We convinced the consumer. We convinced the customers as well, and it went pretty well, impacting positively the use of carton.
Interesting. Vivek?
Yeah, so I am from Delhi International Airport, which is a joint venture between GMR Group and government. So it's one of the most successful PPP projects. We also run two other airports at Goa and Hyderabad in India. So from GMR perspective, and specifically focusing on Delhi Airport, I think Delhi Airport has been at the forefront of ESG, implementing ESG. In fact, we are possibly the first airport in the world to get a green bond last year. So typically, if I divide it into three parts, that is starting from energy. Energy, we are working towards net zero carbon before 2030. In fact, we are already about 99% there. So only the last percent will possibly take a longer time than.
So when you say 99%, all the energy that you use is generated on site?
No, 99% is about net zero carbon.
Okay,
so we are in a scope 1 and a scope 2, which are basically controllable emission. We already have switched to 100% renewable energy, as well as we have moved to electric vehicle. We have done a lot of other work in terms of reducing that. Next stage is a scope 3, which we are working with different airlines as well as other stakeholders, because that is something what airport is all about. Because typically at airport, if GMR has got 1,600 employees, there are 50,000 employees overall who work at the airport. So that is where you need to engage everybody to deliver result. Similarly, in terms of even water, we are already water positive, and by 2024, we are going to be about 140% water positive. So all the greenery that you actually look at the airport is actually done through recycled water, as well as we have got close to about 340 rainwater harvesting pits, and we are building another 300. On the other hand, if I talk about social part of the ESG, we have got, as a GMR group, 15 skill centers. And in Delhi, we typically every year skill about 1,000 people. We have already done 10,000 people skill development, and we absorb 80% of them.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to come back very quickly to all of you, and no particular order. But Deepak, let me start with you. So all of you have talked about some interesting things that you're doing, and the path that you have as a company or as an individual as well. What are the challenges that you see and that you've highlighted, which the fighting of which could be of some use to everyone here?
So, I mean, I see more opportunities. I think when you look at the transformation, which I think all of us agree, is first the availability, how. And here, what we as a company do is we have to practice what we preach. So if we have 30 factories in the country, we have 6 smart. What the smart means is we have digitized the whole processes. And when you digitize them, you start to understand how do you save by using less. For example, our Hyderabad plant is recognized as a smart lighthouse factory by the World Economic Forum. So if you go to that plant and you can see that if our our consumption has gone down by 30% while our production has gone by 2x. So how do we do more with less, right? Then it comes to, and then of course you can copy paste those technologies with others. So you show that how do we do it. Then comes how do you prepare the youth for tomorrow to understand to do it. So we have almost 480 schools sponsored by Schneider Electric, where we have trained almost 180,000 young people to manage those transitions. And then we are actually committed to do 350 in the next 2025 plan. So there is a commitment also, how do we create tomorrow? And of course, while there is a challenge of everybody committing to it, we also take the privilege of training them and make them ready. And the last challenge which comes to the whole ecosystem is how do we create a network of partners? Because this challenge cannot be done alone. You know, me doing alone or Ashwin doing alone won't work. So here, I think the challenge which is actually an opportunity again, how do we create a mind like-minded people, where we connect technologies with a green cement. How do you make a green cement process? How do you electrify? As we talk, we're actually electrifying a cement in the country, which is the biggest installation for us around the world for Schneider Electric. We're a 36 billion euro company, and this is still the biggest cement electrification we're doing in the country. So I think the opportunities are huge, and adaptation of technology, awareness creation, creating the youth and knowledge for tomorrow, and creating a set of partners and ecosystems together to fight this challenge together.
Okay, so as I'm seeing, skilling and finance could be two important areas as future challenges, broadly. Finance, I'll come to Dilkush, but go ahead.
For me, we have enough money. We just need to spend the money rightfully.
Yeah.
I don't think money is a problem.
Okay, great. Yeah, Dilkush, you want to jump in? I'll come to you, Ashwin.
Sure. I think from our perspective, it is the transitioning. Because, you know, whether you like it or no, it's not like you can move from coal to renewable tomorrow. So whilst there's a lot of efforts that is being made, it'll still take some time. Likewise, I think the gap that is there with respect to the net zero target. So whilst India has said net zero target of 2070, Europe is at 2050. And how does one bridge that gap? Because, you know, a lot of Indian corporates are global now and will need to meet that target somewhere. And the divide is between the developing countries and the emerging countries, because whilst you would want to put that capacity and do a lot on the transition, it's going to take time, because there is other societal stuff that, you know, also has to be looked at. So I think the challenge which I would see is that, and the second one which I would call out would be on data. So data and matrices with respect to ESG is something that I think the world is still grappling with, you know, in terms
So
of...
when you say data, you mean like macro countrywide or in plant kind of?
Even in plant. I mean, one is macro countrywide, but even otherwise, across sectors, the kind of data, the quality of data, that would still need to see some improvement. So there's way to go on that.
Okay.
So I would call that out.
Ashwin, challenges?
So I would say three challenges. You know, first, if you look at anyone who has a sustainability targets, and I guess everybody has, the biggest challenge for most of us, and especially if you're in services industry, is scope 3. Okay, it's very easy for someone like Capgemini. Scope 1, scope 2 is 30%, which we'll manage it. We're already managing it. Scope 3 is 70%. And what does scope 3 means? Everyone who's in this room probably is in one way or the other supplier to us. They need to take care of their sustainability targets, you know, so which means we need to collaborate in every aspect of it if each one of us has to be net zero, you know, so I think that's one part of the challenge. Second, regulations and standards. If, you know, there's a lot of greenwashing, a lot of people say they're already net zero. I would be slightly foolish to say, but it's almost impossible for somebody to be net zero in 2020 or even 2025 if you follow the SBTi guidelines. And the purists in the industry are challenging SBTi themselves, and SBTi stands, for those who don't know, Science-Based Target Initiatives. Purists are challenging even SBTi, their goals are not perfect. Okay, so imagine even those who have got scientifically approved targets, if you do that, it's almost impossible to be net zero, but net zero, and there is subtleties about it. That's the second part. And third, on the social side, I think we always, especially in India, we always look one side of it, which is we have got significant economic dividend of youth, which is probably 600 million as UN defines it. I think the challenge is how do we skill them and how do we create employment for them. And there are opportunities like, we say, Thales has, many new MRO requirements. Do we have the right talent? We have so much of renewable and electrical, your EVs coming on the road. Can somebody repair the EV on the road if it comes on the road? Today anybody can repair an IC engine. The roadside vendor can do it. Can they do it the same with EV engine? So I think for me these are the three challenges. How do we work together, the regulation standards and the skills.
Okay, Vidya, do you want to go next?
I think the biggest challenge is working with different stakeholders and getting a buy-in from them that actually it makes sense to go green, and that includes the promoters. I always give an example that, for example, we just expanded Delhi Airport and built the new Terminal 1, where we had pre-certification of it as a green building. If we did the costing, we saw that typically it costs about 6 to 7% higher in terms of investment to make a green building. But looking at the energy saving that it gives, it has a payback of 10 to 11 years. And if you are building an infrastructure like that, which has got a life of at least 30 years, and if you are getting back in 10 years the investment, I think it makes a lot of business sense. So this is something that we have tried to do. For example, we launched TaxiBot, which is basically reducing the carbon footprint of taxiing out of aircraft. Now we had to actually sit with individual airlines and actually show the economics that how does it work, that you don't have to switch on your APU, and my partners from Air France are here. So some of the airlines have started using that, and for each turnaround it typically saves about 750 kg of carbon. Now those are some of the things that you need to make it as a business case, sell it to other partners for us to actually reach, especially in scope 3 emission downwards.
Okay, Vidya, I'm going to come back to you with one more question, but you go ahead, John.
No, I really agree with what I heard. The challenge is the scope 3, is convincing the partner we work with, the community we have around our manufacturing site, the farmers. That's where we need to do a lot of education, a lot of advocacy to make them change their practices. And there are some business case that we build, so we show the interest of it, but we need also to help them invest into these sustainable practices. That's where the main challenge continues to lay.
So, Vidya, is the bigger challenge with, let's say, the aircraft on the airlines who come to your airport, or is it within the airport?
Within the airport is a lot under our control, because typically we are the biggest consumers of
So
electricity.
let me add to that. I mean, in terms of the targets that you set, you may say, okay, I set this big target for, let's say, bringing down emission levels, but most of it is maybe beyond your control.
Right. So when I talk about net zero, I'm talking about scope 1 and scope 2. So that is where we have reached 99%. We are working on scope 3 by basically doing the infrastructure development and also working with other people. For example, we have just now formed a group where we are working on sustainable aviation fuel. So that is something which is supported by Group ADP. We also have got Airbus, and we have got GMR, and we also have got some of the other companies who have come together. And that study, we are then going to go back to government and tell them that, okay, this is what we have got for you, and then take that forward.
Okay. The last point is collaboration, and I think you already talked about one collaborator. You talked about this energy management center. Is there anyone who wants to talk about what a collaborative example or an illustration could be? And Ashwin, you can go first, or Deepak.
I think it links to in the entire supply chain. So as I said,
So this is the Indo-French context as well. Just to,
absolutely,
since we are wrapping up.
Absolutely. So as I said, like we are a technology company. For us, it's all largely about scope 3, and we also build solutions. The example I gave was we had an ambition to be net zero. We worked with the partners around, which is, we found Schneider, and both of us have a real good solution. And not to, it might sound as a sales page, but that's now a very good opportunity for rest of the people in this room to look at how they can leverage the solution. Okay, and that's the way we collaborate with each other. If you're supplying something to us, jointly we sit across, see what are the emissions, how we can jointly help. You might redesign the product. Will I buy it? And maybe I will buy it even if for the right reasons. So I think that's important is as a group, we need to work together to see, is there a change in product design? Is there a change in product supply chain process? Is there a change in how we share data and come together and solve the problem together?
So in 30 seconds, first, it cannot be done alone. Second, the pollution doesn't define India, France. It's everyone, right? The solution technology is for everybody. Schneider, like Capgemini, we have powered top 10 sustainable cities in the country, all Indian cities. If you look at airports, half of the airports are powered by technologies coming from the company. So
when you say cities, you mean what?
The Sustainable Cities program we were running, so the whole command center of the Sustainable Cities, when you can start, so until you don't measure, you don't fix. What you don't measure, you don't know what you're consuming. So I think technologies are available, and the ecosystem of partnerships is already with the companies and the who's and who of the country. I think it's more the awareness, and here also we have a program called Green Yodha, if you've heard about it, where we actually want to bring people together. Where the technology is not a barrier. It's more about adaptation and confidence on how do we do it. And scope 3, I want to re-emphasize, is the biggest challenge. We have taken a pledge that all our top 1,000 suppliers needs to do a full clean chain, and out of which 80 are Indian suppliers in India. So out of that, we do global 1,000, the 80 Indian companies are going to be also participating into the global program. So I think the technologies are available, awareness has to come. I think we need to more experiment, test together, and start keep solving.
So Dilkush, I'm going to come to you for the last word. But before that, Dilkush, you talked about data. Does anyone want to pick up on that, Videh? She said that, the data is still not enough. I mean, we know that there is a ESG target, but are you sufficiently aware of what the data gaps are to fill them? If that's an issue for you, otherwise I'll come to Deepak.
No, that's not an issue for us because we have actually Airport Carbon International, Airport Council International, who have actually made a framework and put up a typical way of calculation, and they are the ones who actually give you accreditation.
Okay.
So that is where the data, whatever data we need, that we need to provide to them, and they do that validation. So I think we already have got a strong framework established across the world.
Okay. Anyone else on data? Deepak?
So for me, data is the foundation to do the sustainability. And if it does not exist, you need to sense it through sensorization. So I think all the big corporates, be the small or the MSMEs, are open to it. The government is in any case helping to say the data privacy policy so that we can secure data. So it's not there enough, but we are on the right route to make it happen. But that is going to be the core principle to do something.
Okay. Dilkush, last word. How are you looking at ESG in a very
So a little about
broad sense,
what everyone said, because I think everyone's in consensus.
And feel
that
free to sum it up as well. Yeah.
Okay, that scope 3 is a challenge, today, and I think when we are speaking about collaborators, from a bank's perspective, they would be the kind of rating agencies that we have. Clients play a very important role, and what Jean said in terms of educating suppliers, I think is very, very important. And we do run programs like Sustainable Supplier Finance, where you give a differential pricing across your suppliers depending on their ESG maturity, and what they're delivering on their KPIs. And I think that's very important because that kind of drives them to improve, and that's how the entire ecosystem will improve with respect to scope 3. So that's my take on scope 3.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for going fast as we had to go because we had no choice. But now it looks like we have time, but then unfortunately. But we will close in any case because you may get some tea. Thank you very much.